3, 2, 1. And hello, H3O. We are live. It's wonderful to see you all. Everyone say hi on my panel today.
Hi.
Today.
Who have we got with us today? Say your name, who you live at home with, and where you are. Because Lauren, it looks like you're in a kind of hangar or something, like an airport hangar. So why don't you start and let us know what's going on?
Yeah. I'm Lauren Saunders. I am currently in our spare room, which is housing a lot of kitchen appliances and cupboards at the moment for the kitchen reno that we may or may not do in the near future. So it's a bit crowded in here. But in the rest of the house, my husband Ewan is in the lounge room, and I've got a 2-year-old Eloise and 4-year-old Finn, who should, fingers crossed, be asleep right now. So yeah.
And can I check, Ewan's is he listening in or not?
He better be. Yeah.
It's a big moment.
If you could just share with us Ewan's worst habit, maybe. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. See if there's a knock on the door.
We'll come to Mark in a minute. Erin, can you introduce yourself? Because it says
Erin.
It is Erin, because underneath his name it says Erin.
My name's
Alex.
This is going to go well. It's been a long day.
I'm Erin. My name's Ed. What questions are they?
The locks are almost as beautiful as Erin's, but not quite.
Yeah.
You've almost got Erin's locks.
Yeah, I've got some dreadlocks. Erin has. I'm just in my our tiny little granny flat. Our main living room is probably the size of your bedroom, so I'm just sitting in the corner, and Erin's 3 meters away in the actual bedroom, so we're speak to each other. It's a pretty small little box, but it's good. It's fun.
It's great.
I love it. And you live up north, don't you? A long way.
Newport, just on the beach there. But we might not be able to go to the beach soon. Hopefully these spooky little restrictions get in. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll come to that in a bit.
Yeah.
So lovely to meet you, Erin. I'm going to call you Erin. See, it never gets old. Yeah. And then the young man in the corner there, do you want to just introduce yourself?
I'm Mark Freeman. I live at Narrabeen, and at home tonight we have my better half, Kerry, our youngest son, Jesse, who's upstairs, and Buddy the dog.
Buddy the dog.
Wonderful.
Good.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And what we've noticed is, if you've just joined, I'm coming to you, Alex.
Sorry.
You're going to get a whole extra dynamic tonight.
It's going to be a disaster. Sorry, Jerry.
If you're tuning in tonight, what we found is people kind of join as they're getting their snacks together and all of that. So what we'd love for you to do is just comment below and share what snacks you're eating tonight. We're going to share ours in a few moments. But Alex, I wanted to start with you. So Alex, tell us about yourself, and then tell us about your snacks that you've got for tonight. We've got quite a lot here, actually.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I live with Dan. We're going to have a lot of time together in the coming months, socially isolating, no doubt. So we're going to be working on this. No, I'm Alex. This is Dan, and we have little Isla, who is 2 years old, and she is asleep, I think. I'm pretty sure she is. So I don't think she's going to creep in like that classic journalist video, which I kind of love, actually. But she's upstairs, and we currently have Dan's parents with us as well, who are desperately trying to get back to the UK. So they are part of our household for now, and maybe for many months. It's all up for grabs at the moment, or years. I mean, who knows? So we're a slightly bigger household at the moment, and working it out.
And you've got a snack? What snack have you got?
Well, I brought a selection, actually. I couldn't quite decide what I wanted. You know when you don't know quite what you want? So I brought some Oreos, which are vegan. So for all those vegans out there, or vegetarians, Erin/Ed, good option. So I brought some Oreos, and then Dan and I, our favourite chocolate is actually generally from Lidl, because it's very reasonable. And they do a brilliant salted, and it's European, which I know we probably should be getting on board with other options, but we still love our European chocolate, and it's salted pretzel flavour, which is actually very good. Recommend that.
Hey.
Yeah.
Others, what snacks have you got there?
I'll show you.
If you're live online, just tell us your snacks. Sorry, Lauren, you go. Yeah.
Just your regular old Tim Tams.
Two
Tim Tam.
Yes.
I don't usually have them on a plate like this, though. Yeah, there's two. But yeah, it was very, very last minute scrambling to get a snack from the cupboard. And I don't usually have them on a plate, though. I was trying to be slightly more refined than my usual, just grabbing them out of the packet. So that's
Have you got a hot drink there, like Milo or whatever?
No. I do like doing the Tim Tam slam in the coffee, but I can't have coffee at night. So
I'll tell you what to do. Next week, if we're still going live, which it looks like we might be, we will do live Tim Tam slams, a competition, like who can do the most or something like that. It'd be great. It'd be lovely.
yeah, the slurping would be great.
Oh, just a tip I heard from like some famous actor, which I didn't know it was on TV. That sounded like I was name dropping, and I'm not. Just take small bites when you're like. So what I like to do is just take a massive bite and then carry on talking. When you're on camera, it's not good. Just take tiny bites. Stay classy. Mark, what have you got? Or Father Mark, as we'll call you.
Brother.
Oh, Brother Mark.
Brother
Mark. Sorry.
This might be the appropriate time to just mention that the young 25-year-old upstairs is a competitive eater. And so yeah, any advice you want on how to eat, Dan? He's got 2 Guinness World Records on it.
Can I just confirm that you're officially allowing your son to come on next week?
No. Yeah. How much will you pay him? My dinner is stuff is there. I've just got a glass of wine with some cheese and bickies and feta, and I'm sorry it's not vegan, but
you have brought
just
class to this panel.
So nice.
and you can see Buddy is paying a lot of attention there. Totally spaced out, probably. Yeah.
I knew you'd class it up, Mark. I knew there was going to be like.
And that wine is going to be a good.
It'd be good wine. Probably. Yeah. And then finally, before we come to Ed, we've had some stuff online. Renee says, "How classy, Mark." Paul Sherwin is on the cheese and crackers and beer. And then Heather Coles Thompson, who has disappeared. Did she delete the comment? It must have been inappropriate.
No.
So put that one back up.
Something homemade, I reckon. Something homemade is bound to be with her.
Yeah. And Jan's loving it. She says, "Mac, that looks delicious." I think she meant Mark. So, Erin, what have you got today?
I'm still getting used to it. I'm going a little bit more healthy. I've got myself a pear.
The Ghana gets
So
out
I'm really sorry.
Come on.
Did you grow that?
It yourself, didn't you?
Pretty delicious, eh? But to counteract that, I've got some chocky as well. But
Oh no.
I haven't had it yet.
No.
I'll save that till I've finished my healthy hair first.
Healthy, yeah.
Well, at the end, we're going to do a confessional prayer where you'll be confessing to me, the priest, about how much of the naughty food you've eaten, and then I'll give you that permission. All right, cool. Well, it's good to see you. If you've just joined us, please keep commenting in. Samantha, it's great to see you. My brother is on. He's eating Swiss chocolate because the clocks have changed. So hi, John, all the way from the UK. If you're tuning in from another country or you're tuning in from Australia, why not comment below as well? We'd love to hear from you. And really what we're trying to do tonight is have a bit of a conversation. We've got a conversation with the people gathered here, as you've heard. It's going to get much more serious in a minute. But we also want to hear from you. So keep commenting. A big shout out to Lyndall, who is official H3O for tonight. She's kind of like our online pastor. So if you want to chat to her about anything, just message H3O directly or put some comments below. But we really want to hear from you, and we really loved the engagement last week. So we want to keep that going. So yeah. So tonight is all about contemplative prayer. Now I have to watch that because I find it really hard to say that word.
It's a bit interesting.
So if I could just have like a free pass for the whole night, I'm not going to say it properly. If we don't have to keep going over that, that's really going to help me. But really, I'm just a learner in all of this, and I've assembled like the dream panel. So we're really grateful to these guys for coming on. And Lauren and Erin or Ed are going to switch off their cameras now, but they'll be joining us later on, and we're going to have an interview with them. So we'll say goodbye to you guys for a bit. Say ciao, ciao. Maybe
Ciao.
some love hearts on the
soon.
live stream. We'd love that.
Enjoy the pair.
Enjoy your pair to yourself. They're definitely going to eat more snacks. And then Alex and brother Mark are going to take us through the next bit. But it's just worth saying, and I know Alex is going to say this as well, these are difficult times. This is a liquid situation which changes every day, a fluid situation which changes every day. And as a church, we want to be here for you. We're experimenting with lots of stuff. There's loads of amazing initiatives that are emerging kind of in the light of COVID-19. But I suppose our focus as a church currently is kind of threefold. Number one, to gather, to try and think about how we might gather as we normally do on a Sunday. But we also know that church is much more than the Sunday. So we're also thinking about how we pastorally care for one another through this time as a church. And that looks like the dive-in group, that looks like phoning each other and checking in. And I know the staff and Jan and some of the leaders and others have just been looking out for each other. And it's been really great to see the community do that. And the third thing is thinking about how we might care for our community. You know, we had some amazing conversations this week and some things that have emerged purely by chance. It really seems like God is doing something, not just in individual churches, but actually bringing churches together. So I was on a Zoom the other day with 5 or 6 church leaders from the beaches, and there's going to be more included in that. And we're trying to work out how the church can respond at this time so that we don't just move to isolation, but actually we look out and try and play our part in any way we can. We need to be both wise but also available, and we're trying to balance that up. So that's kind of our focus for the church at the moment. And as I've said before, we really want to hear from you. If you've got ideas, the answer is generally yes. Just go ahead and do them, and let's see what emerges during this time. So Alex, do you want to share a little bit about tonight and what we're about tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we just wanted to acknowledge really that that we are in just unprecedented times, and within that there's all sorts of different sets of challenges, isn't there, depending on who we are and who we're perhaps living with, as we heard even in that little scenario and hearing from each person in the panel. So some of us are probably climbing up the walls, trying to keep children entertained and safe and not coming into contact with others. Kids that are desperate to be with friends that can't be right now, or perhaps currently are at school, but knowing that that's going to shift and change in the coming days. And so many of us are trying to kind of homeschool at home, something we've perhaps never done before, not quite in the way that we are, and we're desperate for headspace. Others of us are really lonely and wishing that we could be with others, and actually we're stuck home alone. My sister's just got back from New York. We've sorted her out with some self-isolation, and that's where she's going to be alone for the next 2 weeks. And so I'm just conscious there's even within that dynamic, there's all sorts of different experiences. And then some of us, I guess, just within that, I guess there's some of us will be really conscious of grandparents or even parents that have got kind of complications and health kind of complications. And I'm really conscious of just how vulnerable some of our loved ones are. And others of us have kids who have extra complications. And so there's all sorts of thinking through practical decisions to make, logistical decisions to make, and just it weighs heavily on us. And yet I was conscious that in all of that, so there's very different kind of very different situations and perhaps practicalities to think through, and perhaps our home situations look quite different. And yet there is something uniquely unifying about this time that we're in as well. Never before have people of every gender, every ethnicity, every kind of cultural background, every age, every economic background been flung across the whole world into a situation quite like this, where we are all perhaps physically distant and yet unified in a way that we have never been before. And I guess it's just worth kind of acknowledging that and just holding that and just saying that, because that's where we find ourselves currently. And so there are huge challenges ahead, huge challenges we're in already, and there are huge challenges ahead. And yet there are also huge opportunities like never before. And so tonight, I'm sure we're not going to tie up anything that neatly. We're not going to fix anything huge, but we're just going to try and play our part in just journeying into that together. And I hope that something this evening, whether it's a practical tool, a practical prayer that you could literally have a go at praying, or whether it's just a quote or a little line from something that Ed or Lauren say, I just hope there's something in there that gives you hope, that helps secure you and gives you stability in a time that is deeply unstable and shaken and trembling. I guess that the hope is that just somewhere in there there'll be something that speaks to you, and that perhaps may even speak to kind of people that you're connecting with as well. So yeah, that's our hope. I mean, that's quite a large hope for an hour, an hour on Zoom, but that's our hope.
And look, I think as well, like this has emerged. We had a different plan for this Sunday. Like originally we were supposed to be doing the cleanup, and it was Active Sunday, which has been more of a challenge. But we were going to do something different tonight. And as we talked to people throughout the week, and as this kind of emerged, this, as I said earlier, fluid situation, we felt that we needed to talk about this stuff tonight to try and help give people the tools to create some space during this time. And so that emerged from the staff team, and we felt like this was a good way to go. So what's going to happen is Mark and Alex now are going to share for a few moments just to give us a bit of a background to what contemplative prayer is, a little intro to monasticism, which is a complex thing to give a 2-minute intro to. You can do that in 30 seconds, right? And then after that, we'll hear from the guys, and then we're going to try and practice live tonight. We're going to try and do some contemplative prayer tonight, and then we'll see. I've got a little activity for us at the end, like some homework, which we may or may not have time for. So, just to kick us off, let's get into it. What is contemplative prayer?
Brother Mark, why don't you start us off?
Okay. Look, contemplative prayer is any practice at all that enables us to get out of our inner mind that is whirling around, worrying about the past and the future, to descend from our head into the present and be present to God in our hearts, to see with the eyes of our heart. And it's really hard because our culture is built on go, go, go. And so contemplative prayer is any practice that helps us have the right posture, the right stance, that encourages us to surrender to God and to engage with God in a way that we can behold, we can see God's long, loving gaze in us, which enables us to mirror that as we look and work and live around us, and we have the same long, loving gaze that enables us, therefore, to remain in God. You know, John 15:3, that sort of thing. That's all it's about, and it's really just a posture, and there's no formula. It's whatever works for each of us. And I happen to have found some ways that work for me, but other people have found others that work for them.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
And Alex, can I ask you to like build on that, because I think that's really helpful. But what, like for you, what is contemplative prayer and what isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the more I've learned about this, and I'm definitely still learning, like, just to be really clear, I think I've probably been exploring this for about the last 10 years, but like in varying ways. Like, you know, going on my first silent retreat, which is a raving extrovert, was very tricky. In fact, I broke it halfway through and cooled down. So I wasn't even very good at it. But like just the different experiences I've had along the way of just trying, knowing this, like knowing I found it hard and yet knowing it was good. I guess there's been this kind of search for, it's often not about clearing, it doesn't actually have to be about clearing noise or the absence of noise, but it's something about being in a place where there isn't an inner peace and an inner silence, I guess. And it's about using all sorts of tools to get there, all sorts of different approaches that other people have tried for thousands of years often, and found there's been richness in it and there's been something helpful in it. And so the more I've explored it, I've realized it's actually about doing less work in prayer. I think it's harder initially because you have to force yourself not to do the things you might have once done, like not to do the work almost. But it's always saying God is here. God is in all things and in all people. He's already here. And so how do I kind of clear the way just to be present and to notice where he's already in my everyday, So a lot of it is about doing less work, I think. But you said what it isn't. You said to try and say what it isn't. So it isn't like a, it's not a space where it's not a prayer list or a shopping list to God, I guess. That's one of the things I often do if I'm trying to pray, but it's not that. It's not a theological argument with God or with other people. It's not about fixing things or fixing other people. So if you're doing this together with others, again, it's particularly when people are sharing things that are going on for them, like a lot of my kind of forming as someone who's trying to learn how to follow Jesus has been to try and go and fix people. And contemplative prayer isn't about that. It's not about trying to fix anything. It's just being with God. Yeah, do you want to chip in on that, Mark? I'm sure you've got some articulate things to say, but yeah, it's not those things.
Look, I think you've succinctly said it, and it's really about being. And because we're often human doings instead of human beings, because our culture is so caught up with doing, and watching our time because time is money and all that sort of thing. And we get caught up also. The other thing you mentioned was theological arguments, and it's not about the knowledge of God. It's about knowing God yourself and participating in the experience that God wants to speak to us and is speaking to us and is there all the time. It's just half the time, or more than half the time, I'm not listening because I'm so busy got my agenda. And I suppose the two things I would probably want to say, it's either my ego or God's spirit in me that can do the listening and the deciding. And that's the battle. Am I going to analyze things and decide what's the best way, or am I going to listen and seek to see with the eyes of my heart what God is saying? It was quite difficult for me to begin on this journey because my Christian history is very much about doing and theological apologetics, etc. And this is so far from that. It's really about being and being present. I mean, Jesus says, where two or three are gathered together, there I am in your midst. That's it. But the trouble is, it's very hard to let go and move from our outer world and presenting ourselves to going, what's happening inside? And it's when our inner side starts to look at what we're doing externally, that's often the bit of conversion of our habits into being Christ-like habits. So yeah,
it's really good. I think you both touched on this a little bit, but I know when I was at Vicar College, they would get us to do contemplative prayer as part of our formation. So you'd go on like different retreats, or as part of our weekly like rhythm, or when we were away, we would do some of this stuff. And I remember people falling into two camps. Like there were people that were just all in, like I'm going to do this stuff. It's great. It's all there. And there were others that are a bit like suspicious of it, and like they would ask questions like, oh, is this even biblical or whatever? And I imagine there might be one or two watching that are thinking about like thinking that way, like where do we see this like in Scripture?
Oh,
so
can I head off
for the rest?
Go on.
Yeah, I was sorry, Mark. You jump in as well, though. I was going to say, I mean, you could probably. There's all sorts of things you could say in response to that, and probably you could spend the rest of the time kind of digging into different passages. I think the thing that I found probably more compelling than anything, though, is just the way that Jesus got on and both did it, just modelled it, and the things that he then advised and guided his first followers to do himself. I think that's probably the thing I found most helpful. So there is time after time after time when particularly when his disciples are, there's often people around. I think there's one of my favourite stories, I think it's from Mark 6, and just at the end of Mark 6, and they are surrounded by people that are in need, and Jesus just says to his disciples, like, it's it's time for us to get away. And so rather than staying and responding to all the need that he's surrounded by, I think I find this story, like, I'm just so glad it's in there. It's one of the most helpful stories for me. I need to hear this one daily, probably. But rather than responding to all of the needs around him, he just says, come away with me. That's often his words, come away with me, like, come away and take rest. And he does it again and again through the Gospels, particularly those stories of Jesus and his first followers. He does it again and again, and he just says, come away with me. And they get away. They've gone all day and they haven't had a meal. And how many times have you found that happen? Like, you've had one of those days where everything's going on and you don't even have time to stop for lunch. Like, Mark had one of those days this week, because I know he did, because I spoke to him and he said, I haven't eaten since breakfast. Like, it happens, doesn't it? We get caught up in the everyday. And Jesus just says to them, like, okay, we're gonna do something differently here. Come away with me and we're gonna go and rest. And then he talks about taking them away and resting and helping them kind of be well and have quiet and solitude and restoration time. And then they go back to the important work that they were doing. And that's not just one incident in the Bible. It's again and again this model of come away with me at key moments, particularly when it's about making decisions and working out how to, like, contemplating what the next action is going to be. That is the moment that, when it feels like the worst moment to stop and do nothing, that's actually exactly what Jesus does time and time again. He goes away and he takes rest and he takes stock and he spends time with his Father. So.
And Mark, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say that the one of the first passages that really struck me was Mark chapter 1, 35 to 38. It's a terrific one because Jesus has just finished this whole period of healing and casting out demons and all sorts of miracles. And it says early in the morning, he goes up the mountain to pray, and Peter goes looking for him. And when he sees him, he says, "Where were you?" Like, exclamation mark, as if to say, there are people to heal. There's mouths to feed. Where were you? And Jesus doesn't respond. To answer that, we're going here. And we know that because Peter was concerned about the ego and ticking boxes and getting ahead, success. And Jesus was listening to his Father and going, okay, we need to go here. And it's so countercultural because our world is built on success and key performance indicators. But it's all throughout the New Testament. Jesus is always doing it, withdrawing in solitary by the Sea of Galilee, up the mountain. Often he will call the disciples to be with him. So there's lots of examples, and it's in the Old Testament as well.
It is, yes, good point.
A lot, yeah. And I think that's really helpful. We could talk about that for hours, but I think there's a document that you're going to share towards the end, Mark, on Google Drive. So we'll just post that in the thread. And we'll also put on Dive In, which is the kind of HCO group. If you want to join that, then feel free. If someone could shove a link in the feed as well, that would be really helpful. I'm struck by the times that we're in, and it's really interesting. Even if you take out COVID-19, which seems like a really difficult thing to do, I suppose a lot of my life as a kind of church leader has been around responding to the decline of the church. Like, generally, if you look at the pattern in the Western church, or at least in the UK, Australia, and America, the church is pretty much declining. Even in the US, where lots of people go to church, you're still seeing a decline. And we found in the UK that there was like 5 or 3% in some places of the UK attending church. And I know it's a bit higher here. But often people would say to me, like, it's over, the church has had its day, like, you're done. And what I'm reminded of is that throughout history, throughout some of the people that you guys are going to talk about in a few moments, throughout their times, the church has faced this decline time and time again. It's also faced national disasters like we face at the moment, international disasters. The church is not a stranger to this stuff, and often we can be tempted to kind of come up with a new idea. I spent a lot of my time working in what's called fresh expressions, which are new expressions of church. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but we can spend so much time trying to be creative and look forward that we kind of forget to look back and realize that there's so much wisdom in history. There's so much wisdom in what's gone before. I think for me, that's where I found some of this stuff really helpful. Looking at the monastics, and again, we're not going to give a history of monasticism. It sounds like Renee could do that for you from comments that are going
do,
up.
Renee. Please do.
If you just want to type one out, we'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But it seems like in the monastics, these are people that face some of this stuff, and I'm going to talk about one a bit later. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think I do not
roots,
feel like I've got the kind of the history of all the different spiritualities all set out in my mind at all. And Renee, please do fill people in on all of that. But I think the one thing I was struck by, just particularly Dan and I were talking yesterday, and just a few things I've been reading and listening to this week. And I was, so I'm particularly fascinated by the Hebridean revival. I think I probably spoke about it last time that I was speaking at church, but I just think it is a particularly fascinating kind of, I mean, it's the last kind of revival, the last kind of movement and momentum, I guess, the huge kind of change in the church in the British Isles. So we often look back to that one back in the UK. And but anyway, all that to say that in the Hebridean Islands, as is the case in many of the key kind of revival moments in history that people have analysed and kind of looked at and tried to learn from, I guess, moments where the church suddenly grew quite radically. They often come after huge times of social trauma. And so when you look at the Hebridean revivals, that came after the Scottish, the Hebridean kind of islands lost a really disproportionately high number of their young men in the wars. And so at that point, there was almost this, as you can plot with so many of these social traumas, there was this sense of the revival happening in the most remarkable way. You know, it's two old ladies meeting and having a vision of something for their church and for their island and for their kind of little home, and it's just growing and spiraling, and that pattern of social trauma often leading to kind of huge growth and huge momentum. And I guess I just look at that and I don't want to draw any huge conclusions at this point, but I just want to be open. I want to be open. I want to be available to friends, to loved ones that will be asking huge questions of everything. This is a disruptive time. It will disrupt everything, every worldview, also everything will be disrupted by this. And I guess I just want to be open to what will come out of that as well. What will change? What good change will come out of it? What part might I play in those conversations? But I have no idea really at this point. But I want to be open really.
It's really good.
If I could add to that, I think what that demonstrates there is that after a trauma, people have actually got to the end of their resources of going, what do we do? Oh, God, you know, and I'm not saying that this has been caused by God at all. I'm not saying it at all. What I'm saying is that when we choose to let go of our ego and try to make things, solve things by being creative, that's fantastic. But sometimes we need to let go and make sure that what we're using our creative juices on is what God wants. And because then it's likely to succeed in the way that's going to be life-giving. And I think if you go back to the desert fathers and mothers in the 400s, 300s, they started because Christianity became the way to get ahead with Constantine. And so this was their ways. They left the cities. They went away to say no. Nowadays, it's about joint becoming will get you ahead, and it became about ego and success again. And so that's the same thing. It's about people withdrawing in a place of solitude to say, in the inner space, to say, God, I know you love me to bits. I know you love me to bits. I know you love me to bits. Now I want to be open to listening to how you want me to share that love and love my neighbor. And that's really, I think, what it's about.
Great. Yeah, I guess so. Just in this, we're in this series, aren't we, of praxis, and that just has felt like no mistake at all. It feels incredibly timely. It's led to some really interesting, creative thinking and reflection, I think. And I think the thing that I have been struck by, and the conversation that Mark and Dan and I have had a bit about, and actually a little moments with Jan as well and with others, is this idea that actually contemplation. So I guess praxis or practice or action without contemplation actually just leads to burnouts, because it's coming from a place where you are just you're kind of, it comes from a place that isn't resourced, it isn't loved, it isn't it's just going and going and going and pushing and trying to do everything that you can around you. And so action without contemplation becomes burnout, but contemplation, of course, without action is really just self-indulgent. It's just about myself. It's about it's about me and maybe God sitting and having kind of a frothy conversation. But if it doesn't lead to action, then it's empty in itself. And I just came across this beautiful quote, which I just want to quickly throw in, from Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is a brilliant writer to kind of grab hold of. If you have something on your bookshelf that you haven't read by him, just grab it and read it in the coming weeks, because he's got such rich wisdom to offer us. But he says this: rightly sought, action and contemplation will always regulate, balance, and convert one another. Separately, they're dead-ended and they're trapped in personality. I thought there's a whole nother section which I won't do now, but I thought that's brilliant. That's absolutely right. They are dead-ended by themselves, and they do get caught up in personality, and they get trapped in personality. That's just a brilliant phrase, and it's absolutely right. And so there's something about this, feels in some ways like a kind of missing link in that conversation we've been having, and actually a lot of the conversation has ended up being about how it needs to be it needs to be anchored in prayer. It needs to be bedded in by contemplation. And there's just something beautiful about the contemplation leading so naturally to action, and that the action leads back to contemplation. And this is kind of, that cycle that I guess Don offered us as well when he shared. And so I guess I want to throw that in the mix as well.
That's really good. I wonder if Jan, because Jan, you know all about Richard Rohr, if you could just paste a couple of books or some titles in there for people. And obviously difficult to get them delivered at the moment, and probably slightly irresponsible to order a load of stuff on Amazon, but why don't you just get the ebooks? He
does a free every day, or you can get it once a week email as well, which are always brilliant. Yeah,
which Bill Johnson can give a link to, because he sends me stuff from it about once a week, so I don't actually need to subscribe. Jed just put in a really helpful quote from Simon Weil, or Weil, I don't know if I pronounced that right, which is really good. And I think it leads into, as we're going to invite the others back in a few moments. Don't join yet, guys, but we're going to hear from some people that are quite new to this stuff. But I just wanted to read this out and then ask you guys one more question, and then we'll carry on. So Simone, sorry, says, we do not obtain the most precious gifts by going in search of them, but by waiting for them. Man cannot discover them by his own powers, and if he sets out to seek for them, he will find in their place counterfeits, of which he will be unable to discern the falsity. And that's in the feed. If you want to read that, it's really helpful. Thanks, Jed. But that would be my question to you. What is the gift of contemplative prayer in this space we're in now? And if you could be as concise as possible, that would be great.
Yeah, I hope, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna read.
Yeah, why doesn't Mark start and then you read that?
Mark first,
I think that'd be great.
Mark, what's the gift of contemplation at this time?
The gift at the moment is that we're all being forced to slow down anyway, and we're being, in a sense, forced to care more for our physical neighbours, and we're having the opportunity to rethink about what else needs to be fixed up, not just in our houses, because I believe lots of people are buying paint to refurbish their house, but what are the special relationships that we need to work on, whether they're family, whether it's making FaceTime calls to aging relatives or friends, or popping a meal to a neighbour who can't move. these are some of the gifts that come when we stop and slow down and have to take note. So to me, the gift of contemplation is we slow down to hear the heart of God, which is always about loving our neighbor. And it's always about an action. But if we're not listening, we're too busy pursuing our own. Whereas Jesus talked about the first shall be last, the last shall be first. We need to surrender. It's all about surrender. And contemplation is an opportunity to do that.
Wonderful. I'm not going to add too much more. I just want to read this amazing message from someone following Jesus in Wuhan in China on her 48th day in confinement. I just think it's amazing. And it says exactly what you said, Mark, really. Good news from the epicenter of coronavirus. Our family life is better than ever. We've learned how to accept things from other people. Spring is stunning. My cooking has got more creative. We take naps in the middle of the day. Doesn't that sound glorious? It sounds great. COVID wants you to isolate, to stock up, and to take care of your own first. Instead, look to him first as you take care of others first. In community, we can do so much more than on our own. Yeah, it sends shivers down my spine, to be honest, reading that, because I just think, again, there's something about becoming present and about being able to deepen your connection with yourself, with others, with the world around you, and ultimately with something bigger than yourself, which I would say is God. And there's a deepened life that's on offer. I think that's the gift of contemplative prayer in this time.
It's wonderful. That's such a good quote. I think we need to throw that up as well, and we'll put that in dive in later.
Great.
I'm going to invite our wonderful other members of the panel. They're fresh from chewing on their snacks. If you want any further reading off the back of this, we've kind of got a monastic library in our house, so you'd be welcome to, again, appropriately come and borrow. We'll disinfect it and then put it in a bag or something and leave it outside for you. But, yeah. Who did I say we were starting with? I should have written this down. I told you on the phone who was going first.
I thought it was
I think
Ed.
it was me.
Yeah.
Me. Oh, it was you.
No, it was you.
Lauren, why don't we begin with you?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Erin. Lauren, Mark and Alex led a wonderful small group on a Monday night called The Contemplative Way. And I suppose this is something that's been brewing for a while. I know it's something that Mark's longed for a while for H3O. So how did you end up signing up for it? Like what made you want to get involved in this group?
Well, at the time, I didn't actually know anything about contemplative prayer. All I knew at that time was that I wanted more prayer in my life, and I like connecting with others, especially other people from church. And so I thought, okay, this would be a really good thing to be a part of. It's a weekly, in my head, I thought it might be kind of a prayer meeting, a weekly prayer meeting where I get to pray with other people from church. And and so that's why I signed up. And just from the name of contemplative prayer, I thought, oh, maybe it's got a meditative side to it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I knew.
Yeah. Thanks. And so what happened when you showed up?
In the first session that I made it along to, I was and still am really surprised at how quickly I was able to slow down and kind of still all the inner thoughts in my head, because that doesn't happen very often in my life, and it doesn't happen very easily. I'm usually running around thinking about what's the next thing to do to keep life ticking along, in my job or in life as a mum and a wife, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So I was really surprised at how quickly in the session I was able to slow down and kind of just tune out all the background noise and just focus in on God's word and what God was saying to me through the word. And I was really blown away by it, and I came away from that first session feeling just this peace inside and a quiet, and yeah, it was amazing. So I was hooked from that first one.
It's wonderful. So on the in the group, you do different practices. I know each week. What's been your favourite practice?
One thing that I really like in the sessions is where we'll have maybe a couple of passages, and we'll just really focus in on maybe one specific line, and or it might just be even just a couple of words in that, and we'll just take the time to be still and just listen. And one member of the group will read the passage and read the words, and then between each reading there'll be moments of quiet where we can just kind of sit and dwell on those words and what God's saying to us through the words. And I've really gotten a lot out of that, and rather than kind of just racing ahead and reading the next line or something, I've just really been able to get a lot out of it and hear a lot from even just a couple of words. So I've just found that really powerful.
Yeah, it's so good. I know I tried that Bible in a year thing a few times, and it's great, but the danger of it is it just becomes really legalistic, and you end up just beating yourself up every day because you can't read like 20 pages of the Bible or whatever it is, and everyone always gets stuck in the like about halfway through the law in the Old Testament there, and it's like it just goes on and on. It seems like I'm not supposed to say that, but it does, and so it can become about a competition, like, and then you chat to your friends and say, oh yeah, how are you getting on in your Bible in a year? Yeah, I'm doing really well. Yeah, and all that stuff. And it's actually really unhelpful. So I like this idea of like, divine reading. I think it's referred to as, or lectio divina, that you literally focus in on one passage, one word, and let that kind of wash over you. I think it's wonderful. I know Archbishop Justin Welby has been doing that for the whole Bible for a long period. Like, so I don't know where he's up to now, but he was like back there in the Old Testament. So if he can do it, let's give it a go. Lauren, what difference has this made to your life?
I found myself pausing more often just in the day-to-day business. So, even if I'm out with the kids or in the middle of work or something, and I might be starting to feel overwhelmed with the to-do list, or there's just a lot of noise going on, a lot of busyness going on, and I found myself being able to pause more regularly in those moments, even if it's just for like 10 seconds here or there, just to kind of recenter myself and maybe focus on something outside of my head. So it might just be like a cloud in the sky or something in nature usually, and just to kind of reconnect with God in that moment. And it helps. It's been really helpful in these kind of really anxious times and busy times, to just have that little moment, those little moments in my day to help ground me again. So it's been really good.
Thank you.
It's really good. Last question. What's been the gift of contemplative prayer at this difficult time?
For me, it's been a pretty tough time, especially with work. I spend 4 days a week working as a data manager for an agency of New South Wales Health, and I work with intensive care units across the state, looking at a lot of numbers, and I came to last week's session just feeling really heavy with the stuff that I've been working with, and with the knowledge of what's going on, and last week's session was just such a gift to just be able to come to that group and just have it as a safe place where I could just unburden myself and just come as I was and just talk about how I was feeling, and without any judgment, and it's not the sort of space where you come and you expect solutions or suggestions of what to do. You just come and share, and everyone does it, and you know you'll be listened to and heard, and just being able to do that in that space has been a real gift to me, and I really look forward to it each week. And I think just this style of prayer. So for so much of my life, and up until this point, my prayer life has been very one-sided. It's usually like a shopping list, praying for all the people that I think need praying for. It might be me praising God, but yeah, again, one-sided. And I was missing the whole stopping and stilling myself and trying to listen to God and tune into God and what God might be trying to tell me in that moment. And so I think this style of prayers just really reminded me that that listening to God and being still and present in the moments would just bring so much more richness to my prayer life, and it's just given me this real inner peace. It sounds corny, inner peace, but but yeah, I had it every time I do make the time to pray like this. I do walk away feeling lighter and more, you know, as well. So it's been amazing to experience.
Lauren, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing so honestly, and you guys should be encouraged as well, Alex and Mark, in just the way you've led. And yeah, it's so good to hear. Thank you for being so vulnerable as well, and thank you for the work you're doing, like in your day job, because I'm so grateful. You know, you can't say too much, but it's really important stuff. So you know, bless you for that. Can we just say to people online, like, it's great, like, it's so good that people are engaging. If you've got questions for Alex, Mark, Lauren, or Ed, like, feel free to type them. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A, and just looking at the time, like, we're going to change things slightly, panel, so we won't do the extra bit at the end. We can save that for next week. We've got so much time and so much bandwidth in this country. So thanks, Lauren. Just stay on. And Ed, do you want to jump in?
Ta-da!
Here he is.
I was sort of waiting there with my finger like.
That's great. Oh, I love it.
So, mate, like, similar questions. How did you end up going along to this group?
Yeah, I think the first prompting, I guess we were sort of new to the church, so it was a good opportunity to get connected in a more intimate sort of setting with some new people, I guess. So that was, I know, a prompting, I guess, to go. But sort of over the last year, I've been listening to like heaps of podcasts by Tim Keller, and Richard Rohr actually has a few good podcasts. So I'd encourage people to go check them out. And this whole like contemplative prayer, or contemplative, is it contemplative or contemplative? Well, same thing. It just sort of kept coming up as
start out.
It sort of just kept coming up as a regular practice in like you were saying, Alex, in Jesus' life. So I thought it was something I was like super interested in doing. Yeah, so that's why.
Yeah, it's good. So what happened? Like, what made you keep going back? Surely it was more than just the food. No, the food's apparently amazing.
Yeah, no,
Not anymore.
Not now. It's online.
What made me keep coming back? I think, like what Lauren was saying, you feel at the end of the session, you do feel lighter, and it's sort of giving me good techniques, I guess, to live my Christian life, sort of thing. And I think it's been something that I feel like I've missed out, just as I see it as like a holistic approach to like my faith, sort of, or to faith in general. Like it's helped me sort of read my Bible differently and get more out of reading my Bible and just listening to God better. So I guess the eagerness to learn new ways in which to connect with God, I guess, kept me coming back. And yeah, it's just been really good, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And so, like, since you've been going along, after the evenings, like, what difference has it made to your life?
yeah, like I said just before, the way in which for one example, I guess the way in which I read my Bible, I would try and practice new ways of just reading one simple verse and focusing on the different words in that verse, for example, rather than reading a whole chapter and thinking I'm a legend for ticking that box of, Bible's done. But not like that's a bad thing, but, I think it's allowed me to, I guess, listen to God in a new way. And yeah, I think that's it, as well as other things.
It's really good. And the last question, which we've been thinking a little bit about, what is the gift of some of this stuff that you've been exploring at this difficult time?
Yeah. I guess by first listening to God rather than, coming to God with the people who you want to pray for, or, your shopping list, like Lauren was saying, it's made me aware. I'm a gardener as my job, so I guess I'm basically in isolation all the time because I work by myself. But it's allowed me to be more aware of the elderly clients I work for as well. Like my dad is quite unwell, and so I think it's more like, who can I call, or how can I be helping them in these situations, rather than just can't really quite word it properly, but like, rather than just sort of praying for them and for them to be looked after in this period. I guess it's a way in which I can hear from God and how I can be helping them specifically, sort of thing, I guess.
Fantastic. Thanks.
It's really good, guys. It's really good. Can we give them some like virtual emoji love just on Facebook there? I'm gonna do it here. There goes some hearts. They'll be flashing across your screen as you speak. Guys, thank you so much. And like, what a gift this has been just to you. And I know Nick had commented that she really got a lot out of it. And I think everyone that's done that group. And I suppose really our heart behind tonight is to encourage you to give this stuff a go. Particularly when we maybe have more space. I know some people are actually busier than they were before, and people that work from home, not a lot shifted other than having the kids around. But as we rethink, as we kind of restructure our lives, like, I encourage you to think about trying some of this stuff. Oh, look, we're getting lots of love now. Just a couple of questions for the panel, and then I think we're going to pretty much finish our time together by doing some contemplative prayer. So Jan, the wonderful Jan, says, is contemplative prayer better done in a group, or will it work well if just done alone? I'm going to ask Lauren, and then we'll go to the monk.
I think I find it easier to do in a group, because I think if I was doing it trying to do it regularly on my own, I'd forget about it and kind of get all mixed up in the general busyness of life. So I really liked that we've had a weekly thing to kind of keep me accountable, and so I found it really helpful. And then during the week, like I mentioned, we'll have moments where I will do it on my own. But definitely having that weekly group to meet with has been really helpful to me.
Yeah. So for those that have just joined, we're just asking the question: is it better to do contemplative prayer on your own, or in a group, or can it be done alone? Does anyone else want to throw in?
I would just say that selfishly, I set up this group with Mark because I can't do this by myself. I'm useless at doing it by myself. And I genuinely, so I said this to the group like week one, I think. And I've just kept saying thank you, because genuinely, I've just been so grateful to have a bunch of people that are up for going on a journey with it together. Because I know that solitude is good, and I know it's good for me, particularly as someone who tries to cram in a lot of stuff in a day and tries to just do too much, basically. And I feel I kind of almost don't even know who I am, because I just cram everything in to avoid being by myself. I know that's my particular kind of struggle, probably. But so I particularly really need this. But yeah, honestly, I find doing this stuff really hard by myself. Some people will find it easier than I do. But there's something about it becoming easier by yourself, just as Lauren said, when you have just been there and you've practiced it and you've gone into a pattern of it with others. This stuff takes time, and it's not often not easy when you first try it. So to do it together in the safety and security of a group, not always having to have something to offer the group, sometimes just having silence has been a real gift for me. So I'm really grateful to the group.
I think it's about developing, if you're doing it on your own, or you're trying to do it on your own, developing a space, a rhythm, like our friends, Bill and Karen Turner, who might they watching, they probably will at some point. They had a prayer stair in their house, and like they would sit there and they had loads of white stuff that enabled them to enter into some of this prayer. I know for me, like I used to sit on the same chair. I'm trying to do that now, so I'm working out what my new prayer chair is. But as you do that stuff, it kind of gets you into the rhythm.
As you would with anything, like it's building like habits that support this area of your life, as you would with exercise, as you would with eating well, sorting out your garden, whatever it is. Like there's things that you would develop to kind of support that habit, and so this is no different.
We've got another question which kind of links to this, like from Beck. Thanks, Beck. How would you incorporate the contemplative way into raising children as young believers? Any tips for sharing this way? We're going to start with Ed.
I've got heaps to start on this one. You're kidding, right?
Can I
kick us off with that one, because you've done it as a grandparent and a parent.
Well, I don't know about that. I have to tell you that one of the things that really helps me to see God and to see the long loving gaze for me is when I see a mum or a dad caring for their child in such a tender way. And multiple times I will see a mum, changing a nappy at the back of church, but trying to listen as well. And I just go, wow, that is God working in the hands of a mother. And that just really blows me away. So I suppose I see it now in the other so easily. I'm not so sure that I'm good at doing it myself, to be honest. I don't think I am. But what I try to do with my grandchildren is I try to help them to notice things. So sometimes when we're out walking, I'll just ask them, what do you see with those flowers, or what do you see over there? And they describe the bush and and then I say, but what colours are there, and what's in there, and what do you think that's telling us? And usually I find that they come up with some amazing things. I was out with Isabella today, and she had noticed that there was always one tree which had stink bugs, and then we started this whole conversation, and it was about noticing things and then taking it the next step and saying, so what's the stink thing in my life? Which trees, which are the things that where I mess up? Now these are slow conversations to happen with children. I'm not an expert. I'm a learner, but I have to say I get great encouragement from the parents I see at H3O. They just blow my mind. So sorry I didn't answer it, but the one question that I've heard Richard Raw's mate James Finlay answer this, and he answered to a young mum who was breastfeeding, and she said, why is it that I get up at 5 o'clock to have my quiet time or 6 o'clock or whatever it is, and then that's the day that my 18-month-old comes out and interrupts me? And he answered her to say, well, this is God's chance to feel the love of a mother through the child. And instead of her having to have her quiet time, she was having the God experience through her loving the child. And I thought it was a really helpful summary. Anyway.
Very good.
It's great.
Alex, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think we need to.
It's so good.
Amazing.
And I love the way that obviously I'm new to HPO, but I love the way that we allow children to lead us. And I think that's a helpful practice as well. Like genuinely putting them front and center and saying what they've got to offer is as valid, if not more important. Jesus said, if we want to understand the kingdom of heaven, we should first look at children.
Yeah.
And I'm increasingly believing that as we see different things emerge. And actually, we should have a young person on the panel tonight. We've got Ed. It's about as close as we've got. Yeah. Look,
Love it.
I think we're in injury time, but we've also got good engagement online. There's a few people watching, so we're gonna, if you're up for it, and we'd love for you to again click the love button if you are up for it on there. We're loving the emojis that are coming through. But Alex, if you're up for Alex, just to lead us through some contemplative prayer, and then I think we'll finish. There was another activity which I think I'll just make a video of in the coming weeks. But if we say goodbye to our wonderful panel, they're so good.
Oh.
We love you lots.
Bye, Lauren.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, Erin.
So if you leave
Bye,
the
Mark.
webinar, guys, that'd be great. And they're gonna jump on Facebook Live now and just join in with what's going on. So yeah. So Alex, I reckon you've probably got about 5 minutes if that's okay. At the top of your sheet it says 8 minutes, so let's try and go in between. And what I'll do is I'll get out of the way. Actually, I'll let you lead us through this bit, and then I'll jump back in a minute. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, I think be encouraged because we have the luxury of a whole 5 minutes, and as Lauren said, I think I'm often amazed at how so much can happen actually in a short time, and how we can actually somehow become quite centered and anchored in a short time. So we've got a whole 5 minutes together. And just to give you a little bit of context, and then I'll launch straight in. We're about to pray the examen prayer or the examine prayer, depending on who you talk to. I'm going to say the examen. And really it's a very simple prayer. And we thought it would be the most helpful one to offer you tonight. It's one of the prayers that we've prayed as the contemplative prayer group over the last month or so that we've been gathering. And it was written by a chap called Saint Ignatius of Loyola. And he's got a fascinating story. He was a bit of a ladies man. Like, he loved the ladies. He had a really interesting kind of really quite a fascinating life. And it all came to a bit of a standstill when he basically had his leg cannoned off, like by a cannonball, like taken off. And he wasn't in a good way. Anyway, all that to say, he much later became the leader of, he kind of formed a monastic movement called the Jesuits. So the Ignatian way is the Jesuits, and they are, I guess, the monastic movement. So our current Pope is the Jesuit, to give you kind of a connection there. I guess what I want to say to you is I've been gifted by the very practical tools that St. Ignatius offers us. It's very practical. So he used to say to his monks, his brothers, as they gathered each day, these are the prayers you should pray each day. And there were many of them. And they'll pray at least 5 times, maybe 7 times a day. But if you don't manage to pray all of the prayers, this is the one prayer that you should pray every day. And so that's the prayer we're gonna pray together. I love that kind of sense of just a realistic expectation. This is what you should pray, but this is the one prayer. If you don't manage all those prayers, that you should pray. And there's an attentiveness to our everyday that goes on in this prayer. We're just stopping and we're taking stock of the day that's been, and we're looking ahead to the day that's coming. We're noticing where God might have been. So the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do is just to sit comfortably wherever you are. Perhaps you're on your sofa, perhaps you've got the support of a chair, and to sit comfortably and to close your eyes. And I'm going to encourage you just to take a few deep breaths in and out. And why don't you do that a couple more times, breathing in and breathing out. And one more time, breathing in and breathing out. And then just allow your breathing to go back to normal. Perhaps you notice your lungs fill with air and then empty as you exhaled. We're told that God is closer than the breath we breathe. And as you stay sat with your eyes closed, I'm going to suggest that you just notice the noises that are outside the room. And then perhaps begin to notice the noises that are within the room. And we're going to look back over the last 24 hours, over the last day, and we're just going to replay them with God. You might like to imagine, it feels a bit old school now, but digging out a photo album and turning the pages. And as you do that, perhaps each moment from the day, from the last 24 hours, has been recorded in a photograph. This isn't a filtered photograph, but just the moment as it is in a photo. And so it's almost as if you're just thumbing your way through that photo album, just noticing the moments of the last 24 hours. And don't worry if they're not chronological, it doesn't matter. Just noticing the moments. I'm going to encourage you just to recall a moment that you felt most alive, most yourself. And you're just going to enjoy that moment again. Linger there. Notice what it was that gave you life or energy in this experience. And take a moment to celebrate it. Perhaps even to thank God for it. And accept it as part of the truth of the past day. And then in the stillness, just allow yourself to remember a moment in your day that you felt least alive, least able to be yourself. And again, just revisit it. Observe it without judgment. Did it drain you of energy? Do you need to forgive someone, perhaps yourself, or maybe it's someone else? Accept it as part of the truth of today. Let God look at you. Let him look at you with his long, loving gaze. And as we come into land, again, I'm just going to encourage you to notice the sounds that are outside this room. And notice the sounds that are in the room where you're sat. that's where we'll close. Thank you so much for giving that a go. If you wanted to, absolutely no expectation or pressure to share, but if you wanted to share anything that emerged in that time for you, you're very welcome to do that, obviously, in the comments. But if you'd like to just share that in your journal or share that with someone you're sat next to, obviously feel free to do that.
Alex, that was really helpful. Thanks so much. And if you've just joined us, we've spent the last little while talking about contemplative prayer, like finding calm in the storm that we're facing at the moment, and looking for the gift of this time. And so if you want to wind back at a later date, feel free to do that. But we still love to have comments and thoughts and responses from people as we kind of come to close. We're going to finish by saying the Lord's Prayer all together, and me and Alex will say it here. You might want to say it at home in your language, whoever you are, wherever you're from. But before we do that, just a couple of notices. What we found is with online church, like there's different people engaging with it that wouldn't normally. And I know there's some people watching that wouldn't normally come to church. And just to say, you're so welcome. You didn't we loved having you, and feel free to comment. You're part of us. You're part of our family, wherever you're watching from, Australia, the UK, anywhere else. But we're probably going to do something online called Alpha, and Alpha is an opportunity to explore life and Christianity in a really chilled environment where we get to talk about this guy Jesus, who we believe is our living hope, who we believe has changed the world. And it may not feel like that at the moment. We'll explore questions like, who is Jesus? Like, why is there suffering in the world? How can I have faith when it feels like there's nothing real? And lots of questions like that. So we're going to try and do that online in the next couple of weeks. But we're just kind of waiting to see how many people want to do it. So when we get sort of 6 to 10 people, we'll start an Alpha group online. So if you'd like to be part of that, please comment below. We're going to make a Facebook event for that, or send us an email, hello@h3o.church, or just send me a personal message or comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The other thing to say is, if you've loved hearing about this contemplative prayer, there's going to be lots of opportunities to be involved in it. Do you want to just share?
Yeah, just really briefly. Just to say, so we've currently got a group going that is in its last, it's been running during Lent, so we've got 2 weeks to go, 2 more kind of Monday gatherings. We'll pause for Easter, and I guess what would traditionally be the Easter holidays for school. I know that feels a bit more up in the air at the moment. But we'll kind of, in whatever state it is in just a second. But our plan is, and so watch this space if you are interested, and send us a message if you are. But we're going to start another one. So that one, it will be entirely online from the start. This one started physically and then moved online, which was great. But this one will start online. It's really a commitment of about an hour and a half on a mid-week kind of night, and it will run for 6 weeks. So if what you've heard from Lauren and Ed is intriguing you and it sparks something in you, then we'll also do a taster night as well. So we'll have a taster night, and then it will run for 6 weeks. So a chance just to come and throw yourself in and have a go yourself, and we won't follow you up after that first session. The other thing that Mark has very graciously offered as well, just conscious that a lot of people, particularly in the kind of sand shifting time that we're in, where day to day we don't quite know what's going to happen next. A lot of people actually are really keen and really interested and intrigued by some of these kind of contemplative practices. So maybe they've missed the boat on that group, but they'd really like to do something. So just the next 2 weeks, Mark's really keen to offer something twice a week. That he's going to throw a poll out in the H3O group and also in their dive-in group, and just get a sense of when people would like them. And then twice a week, whether it's early in the morning, in the evening, or even a lunch break, there'll be a chance to do something for about 15-20 minutes. So just one simple practice that will happen 15-20 minutes. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can, but certainly over the next 2 weeks, they're going to be popping up as well. So look out for them, get involved in them if you're open to that. And it sounds like Dan might well send something to you in the coming weeks, but we were optimistic, so we probably won't do that tonight.
Yeah, we were going to talk a bit about a rule of life, and the rule of life comes from St. Benedict, and it's basically about having rituals and practices that might happen daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, which help us. And it struck me that actually having a rule of life at this time, like a rhythm of things that we do, would be really helpful. So John Kavanagh, who's a genius, found a really great resource from Bridgetown Church, which is run by a guy called John Mark Comer. Some of you might have heard of him. He did this great podcast called This Cultural Moment with an Australian guy called Mark Sayers. So there's no copyright in the kingdom, so we're just going to steal their Rule of Life because it's so good.
Absolutely.
And we'll throw that up, and probably we'll either make a video in the week or maybe we'll talk about it next Sunday. But I'd love people to think about some of that stuff, like what does your daily rhythm look like to help us not just survive during like COVID-19, but thrive. And I believe in it in our own way we can do that as well as responding. So just to finish, just remember what we're trying to do as a church is, number one, gather online like we're doing now to try and be church and be together. And it's been great to see the engagement and the comments. And I'm sorry if we've missed anything. We'll go back and read that. So thanks for signing up. The second thing that we're trying to do is look after one another as a church, to like ring in. So just call in on your friends, check in on people. If someone comes to mind, just phone them, send them a message. Don't be shy. And the third thing is to think about how we might serve our community at this time. And stuff's going to be emerging in the coming weeks. There's some great groups that where we can actually join together as churches and do stuff. So if you'd be up for helping with some of that, let us know and we'll start sharing some of that stuff. So it's been great to be with you. We love you lots. Thank you so much to our wonderful panel for all that they've done, for all that they gave tonight. Alex, thank you. You're good at this stuff.
Wow, I feel like I'm a little Churchill dog. I've been doing this all night and I think it's really irritating. So I'm really sorry. I've only just spotted it in the closing minutes. So apologies for that. But I've had a great night too.
Cool. Well, we're going to finish by saying the Lord's Prayer together. If you don't know it, just Google it real quick because it will be quicker than me trying to make Zoom work. So we'll pray it together and then I encourage you to do that and I'll finish your blessing. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Amen. The Anglicans have this great blessing, which is used around Christmas time, but we're going to use it today. So may Christ, the Son of righteousness, scatter the darkness from your path and make you ready to meet him again when he comes in glory. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always, evermore. Amen.
Amen.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
It's been amazing. Awkward. Trying to shut the video. Hooray!